So good afternoon, everyone. If you are new to the stock market game and new to our stock market game prep week, my name is Sarah Bryant. I am the Vice President of Regional Programs for the SIFMA Foundation. And I have the pleasure of working with educators, administrators, parents, volunteers, and a number of other stakeholders to bring the stock market game and a number of our other programs across the country. But particularly, I get a chance to work with those in New York, New Jersey, Florida, and Colorado. So if you're represented for any of those states, a huge, huge, huge hello to you. But irrespective of wherever you are joining us from, I hope you are well caffeinated as I am. And I'm really happy to have you here as part of our growing stock market game community. We are up to session 3 of Stock Market Game Prep Week. This session is all about what does the stock market game look like outside of the classroom experience. SMG is meant to be interactive, it's fun, it's easy, but it's not limited solely for teachers of students in class. Even though we have a lot of curriculum that caters to students in grades 4 through 12, and we have lessons galore, it's not only meant to be for direct instruction in the classroom. So this session is all for the parents, the volunteers, the teachers who are interested in starting a club, the nonprofit directors and facilitators, anyone who is thinking about utilizing the stock market game outside of the traditional classroom space. If you've wondered how that works, if there are any differences, what does that mean for you? Does it operate a little bit differently? You're going to get all of your questions answered here today. So today's agenda, we're going to cover a couple of different things because out of school time, I think is really unique and special because these settings offer a really great opportunity to provide flexible and enriching experiences where young people can develop a sense of independence as they try new adventures, learn and practice new skills. And it also tends to come with the added expectation of being fun and engaging too. And I don't think that's a bad thing. So whether you're an after-school club, a Saturday program, homeschool co-op, or you're at home, you're uniquely positioned to be able to provide an environment where young people have an even greater flexibility to learn at their pace and their schedule, all while developing a variety excuse me, of social skills such as communication, collaboration, and conflict resolution. And those same benefits can be maintained and amplified while utilizing the stock market game. So our agenda today, we're going to cover what it looks like to utilize the stock market game beyond the classroom, talk about structuring the stock market game and those differences and how it can be applied, how to engage students a little bit differently so that we enhance that experience for them, how to foster healthy competition, and we're of course going to leave some time for questions. So let's get right into it. The first thing that I want to make sure that we address for all of the attendees and viewers is that the process is completely the same in terms of how to get started and launch the stock market game. It all begins with registration, irrespective of how you intend to utilize it. If you're going to utilize it with students, if you want to use it one-on-one, you still have to register no matter what. Something to note, however, is that an adult is still required and always required to complete the registration process. Even if this is going to be a potentially student-led investment club or student-led group, even if it's going to primarily be led and functioned independently with students driving, it still needs to be completed by an adult. So that can be a teacher at the school or their respective school. It can be a parent. It can be any other adult designee as long as it's an adult. The next part is the registration process, again, is exactly the same, except one particular portion. Right up front, it's about the third phase of registration. We're asked, where will you teach the program? And you have to identify yourself. This is the only thing that's really different, and you want to make sure that you distinguish yourself appropriately. So this is where you have the option to select homeschool, after school, post-secondary, or adult teams, or something that's outside of the scope of the traditional classroom. Something that comes up quite frequently, if you are a teacher who's teaching a class of grades 4 through 12, but you plan on utilizing the stock market game as an after-school club or perhaps an enrichment activity or other time outside of class, you're actually not going to select, I want a 4th through 12th grade team, you're going to select after school team. When you get to this section, you always want to prioritize the phrase that best identifies how you intend to use it. Other than that, registration is completely the same, including when you get to the portion at end where you can add a class, you're just simply adding your group. So whether it's one student, if you're a parent or child, or whether you're utilizing it with multiple students, you can still add the necessary amount of students and receive the number of portfolios. There's still no limitation to how many portfolios you can receive. Again, you have the same type of portfolio functionality and you have the same level of access to both teacher and student resources. Your interactions with both the stock market game portfolio and the resources are not limited or changed at all just because you're not utilizing it in school or affiliated with a particular school. Does not matter. You have access to the same materials. And with that, the same rules apply for the stock market game, both the national and local rules. You're operating under the same game sessions, same windows, nothing has changed. And you are still eligible to participate in all of our additional program enhancements, including InvestorIte essay competition that's available both fall and spring. Your students are still more than welcome to participate, even if you're participating with a parent-child or if it's a Saturday run program, doesn't matter, you can still sign up. You also still have access to our thousands of invested forward financial professionals and all of the different opportunities that arise there. There are some minor differences in terms of how financial professionals can connect with stock market game clubs. We'll get into that a little bit later. And then another consideration specifically for those utilizing the stock market game outside of the classroom space is that oftentimes time is more of a factor. You have more flexibility. So you may be meeting with your students, if at all, but you may be meeting with your students either after hours, later in the evening, on the weekend, earlier in the day, so first thing in the morning. Because the times can fluctuate, that's just something to keep in mind when you are actively using the portfolio or when you're guiding your students to utilize the portfolio. Something to keep in mind is that irrespective, even though they can access their portfolio and the platform at any point in time, 24/7, it's still based on market hours when those transactions are placed, which is Monday through Friday, 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this may affect how they interact with their portfolio, some choices that they may opt to make, since most things will be happening outside of market hours. But we'll talk about that a little bit more too. So let's get into what it looks like to structure the stock market game and some considerations there too. Before getting started, some of the bigger things that may come up that folks have questions with is that, do you work individually or are group teams better? Again, this is really dependent upon your particular group of students or your singular student and how you best intend to implement the program. So individual simply means that each single person manages their own unique portfolio. Groups simply mean any group between 2 to 5 students, preferably no more than 5. They each share a portfolio, but what exactly is best? This will vary depending on how you're utilizing it, just like in the classroom, but with some other considerations. So for example, depending on, let's use a stock market game club, for example, after school or before school, which can have sometimes a lot of turnover. If you are an enrichment club or another activity, sometimes there's heavy student turnover where you want to be mindful of that experience. So we always suggest in those moments where you think there's high turnover with your particular group, you want to keep the groups either small, so about 2 to 3, or individual portfolios to allow for minimal disruption among the group. It's also a matter of considering how much time are you spending together? Are there structured periods where you're meeting weekly, every day, bi-weekly, at any point in any time frame? Do you ever come together to meet? Are the students ever going to interact? If they're not interacting or don't have the opportunity to interact as directly at any point, or it's severely limited, it may be best to have students operate and have their own portfolios. Outside of that, you can feel free to group them accordingly as it continues to have the benefit of collaboration and working together across the board to manage all of those ideas. So semester versus year-long game sessions. So the stock market game, during registration, you still have the opportunity to participate in either a semester-long session that operates in fall and the spring, or something that runs the entire academic year. Whether you're participating outside of class time, in any point in time, you will still have to select a particular game window and should select the one that would best work with your schedule. However, those that are utilizing the stock market game in non-traditional ways tend to find the most benefit, especially when there's a lot of fluidity with their groups, to participate in the year-long session. This provides the most time for development, the most flexibility, and allows just time to pace accordingly. That's where they tend to find the best results with students outside of class time. But if you know you have a structured period for your particular group, you're only meeting from February through late April, or whatever your dates are, feel free to still select the dates that work best for you. If you are not sure, year-long will just provide the most flexibility so you can jump in as needed. Competitive versus non-competitive game sessions. If you're not sure what that means, competitive versus non-competitive is available across a number of locations. There's no difference. You can jump in. It won't affect your standing or your participation at all, but so many people will prefer the competitive session because it adds a level of healthy competition for the students. It adds another incentive, and it keeps them even more engaged. Lessons versus videos. So our curriculum offers a number of opportunities to really structure the scope. And most of our lessons plan out for about 45 minutes, and that's including the lesson, the activity, and some of the reflections and the direct use of the portfolio. However, outside of school time, it looks a little bit different. You may have more time, less time, working with only 20 minutes, or maybe you have 2 hours. Who knows? You have a whole lot more to work with. So it's important that you make it as engaging as possible, because also you want to make it fun, right? It's not meant to feel like a class on purpose in most of these occasions. So how do you amplify the fun while ensuring that you have the opportunity to gauge learning? And the easiest way to do that is through our videos. A number of our videos, and I'll go into that very quickly as well. A number of our videos touch on all of our core topics that will provide a great foundation for the stock market game and those financial instruments, how to use them, but even more importantly, how to understand them. And it's quick, it's engaging, and you can jump right into more of the activity and more of the actual application through the portfolio. So we have our stock market game essential syllabus. It's super easy and friendly. You still have access to it through the Teacher Support Center. It can still be utilized and followed even outside of the classroom. It was aptly designed by teachers and with the assistance of teachers to be simple to follow and straightforward, rinse and repeat from lesson to lesson. But what may change, and I think it's a little simpler, I always say SMG in 1, 2, 3. With a basic thing, you start with ensuring that they can learn a particular topic, still following that same sequence. You choose the topic that you would like to start with. And I always say you choose the topic you would like to start with, because depending on how you're utilizing it, and the level of understanding for your particular group of students, you may want to start a little further beyond where the SMG Essential Syllabus begins for you. And you have the flexibility to do that if you're not following a particular structure that sometimes the classroom environment can bring. But you want to start with ensuring that they can learn a particular concept. And they don't want to sit there necessarily be lectured per se every time. The videos are wonderful because they're accessible both directly if you want everyone to watch them collectively, or they can watch it on their own, on their phones, on any video. It can be something that can watch completely, and it's only a couple of minutes. It will not take too much time. Then they can jump right into practicing. That's what they want to do. They want to practice what they are learning. They're like, okay, great, I've got it. So that practice will likely include things like a direct activity, but a lot of them are research based. I think activity and bumping up the activity and the interaction with students, irrespective of their grade level, is going to be huge in being successful outside of school time. You want to take, not only say take away from the lessons, but less of the lecturing in lessons and a lot more activity-based instruction. From there, they have the opportunity to apply it. This is where they're taking what they learned in that video, what they've gauged from that activity, and applying it directly to their portfolio. It's a 1, 2, 3-step process between the video directly to utilizing their portfolio. This doesn't have to be the only time they access their portfolio. Students can access it at any time, but it's an easy way to structure it and keep them engaged. We noted before that the portfolio and utilizing it for students outside of school time can look a little different. Not in terms of how it functions. They still make trades the same way. They still have the opportunity to access the application the same way, but when their trades process looks a little different. So if you're meeting outside of the traditional classroom time, or really outside of market hours, and that's where you're going to be meeting with your students, or if you're not necessarily meeting with them and they're working a bit more independently, they have the opportunity and may potentially make transactions after market hours. So it might be before 9:30 a.m. and it might be after 4 p.m. or on the weekend. They're more than welcome to make those transactions at any point, but any transaction that's made outside of market hours goes into a pending status. That's the only difference, but it's something to consider. Pending status just simply means it won't process until the market opens again. That's all that means. It will still process, it's still confirmed, but the market has to be open for them to do so. Usually not too much of a hindrance for most students, but if you are participating outside of school time, you may have to remind them that they shouldn't be on their phones or other devices trying to make trades so it doesn't interrupt their school day. So let's get into engaging students. So engaging students outside of class time looks a little bit different. I mentioned we want to amplify the activity. We found a lot more emphasis on this. We found a lot more success when it's more activity-based instruction than anything else. And you want to set the tone, however, right at the beginning of why they're doing this. If this is going to be the only opportunity that they're going to be introduced to the stock market game or investment education, you want to level set across the board. This just sets the tone for your group, whether it's one person, whether it's many students, whether it's, if that rotates, that the tone is always set of why they are participating in this, why investing is important. And whether that's through setting financial goals, whether it's assessing where they are and just gauging their learning with a pretest or a quick risky behavior, whether it's using some example from current news, you want to set the tone and let them know why you're doing this, why this is important. Our stock market game kickoff video actually does just that really well. I love videos, but you want to set the tone to keep them engaged. They need to understand why they're involved, why it's important, why it's going to be fun, and what to expect. This is also the great opportunity. You want to reel them in as quickly as possible. This also applies in the classroom, right? But at the same time, it's a little different in that they want to keep them guessing. You want to keep them engaged and really quickly right off the bat. So the first thing I often suggest is to just relate to them immediately, make it applicable to what they know and what they understand. So apply it to products and services that they use every day. Open the conversation about companies and what that looks like and why we're going to be investing in them and what investing in them even means, starting with the services that they're utilizing, the products that they are interacting with and buying, purchasing, interested in purchasing, and starting there, making it relevant as quickly as possible. You also have the opportunity to, of course, access our full suite of videos that are accessible within the stock market game. Essential syllabus also within our YouTube channel, but you're not limited solely to the core content videos. So our core videos that are mentioned that introduce the very specific topics of investing, from an intro to stocks, an intro to companies, how to build a portfolio, diversification, etc. You have the opportunity to expand just a little bit more beyond that scope. And we have a number of additional videos that talk about things that just can build upon the greater understanding. So students can guide themselves through these videos, or you can guide them directly to piggyback off of another concept. One of the things that happens really beautifully across the board, especially outside when you have more organic conversation, is that it builds really organically. So it may jump, certain topics may be presented faster than intended sometimes, or depending on what's happening in the markets, what's happening in the news, what's happening in their lives, and building out and having the flexibility to move with the direction that the student or students are moving is a really big benefit. I encourage users to actually move in that same capacity and give them that flexibility. So with that, depending on the question that may come up, and again, this can happen even in class time, but we're specifically talking about those outside, we have a number of videos, and I've actually hosted a lot of them, where we talk about different concepts that will come up real time in the markets. So we have our Sarah's opening bell, and then we have another set of additional videos, all found on our YouTube channel, all accessible directly via the portfolio, or just going straight to the YouTube channel, that dives into really quickly some of those ways that we can explain and further explain the markets, really quick bite-sized videos, from corporate actions and mergers and acquisitions to growth and value investing, and then specific things that are just talking about what's happening in the market yesterday. Like, what does it mean? So having the flexibility to have broader conversations about what's happening now and making it even more relevant is super, super important. In terms of fostering healthy competition, stock market game users, especially when it comes to clubs, we found a lot of really great success with homeschool co-ops and nonprofits, is to amplify the competition aspect. There's no greater incentive with students in general, but they love to win. But winning is not just, or just not even win, but the idea of competing against one another. So all portfolios have and will showcase where a particular portfolio stands among their particular game session, and the same will occur even with those who are participating outside of school time. But it's not only limited to the portfolio experience. There are other opportunities to gamify the entire experience, whether it's Kahoot, Quizlet, Gimkit. There are so many additional gamified options and this is also an opportunity to test engage learning that already exists. We have a number of teachers who have shared their direct Kahoot quizzes that are available. They've shared them directly. Any opportunity to make it exciting and to gamify even further the game, that is a great opportunity to make sure that they are learning and to make sure that they're staying engaged. But with that, is that even while they're still participating, if you're going to participate in the competitive session, they are still going to be eligible for prizes. So they are not eliminated from the potential for prizes just because they're not participating in school per se, or perhaps affiliated with the school, if that's how they're utilizing the program. There's still the opportunity to win if they place a top portfolio. So that's a great incentive to share with the students to keep them engaged and excited about how their portfolio is developing, and also have a sense of identity for what's about to happen. We love to celebrate our students. There's always the possibility to win prizes. So definitely amplifying that right at the front makes it a lot more exciting as well. So some additional questions I'm going to get into that we tend to receive are, do students need to begin trading as soon as the game session begins? No. So those that utilize the stock market game outside of school time tend to have a bit more of a later start. That's completely fine. Game session windows are exactly that. They're just windows. There's start dates for when trading begins, and it's the last day of trading. You can technically begin usually any time within that window, except usually a couple of weeks before the session ends, but you don't have to begin on the very first day. If you have some turnover with your students, if you need a couple of weeks or a couple of days to kind of launch successfully, or you want to introduce certain concepts, or if you've had some turnover, it's completely fine if you start a little bit later than the session in which you are registered. How much time should students spend utilizing the platform? That varies. So the average time that a student spends directly utilizing the platform is about 2 hours per week. Now, I emphasize direct use of the platform because that means the time spent actively logged in to the site to access either the resources or direct use of making transactions within the portfolio system. That's the average. It does not mean that there's more, there's less time, but it also does not factor into additional time that can be spent researching, and they may use additional formats. If there's journal prompts that's involved, if they're doing any other presentation or oral, or the discussions that are happening off the site, that's just the time spent utilizing the direct platform. In terms of how to navigate that successfully, once students have a fuller understanding of how to conduct their research and how to look up and analyze events that are happening in the markets, and how to do that via the stock market game to make their trades, they may pop in and out to check on their transactions periodically throughout the week or sometimes throughout the day. But the average is about 2 hours, but we try not to say how much time should a student spend. It really depends on the parameters that you're setting. Can students still participate outside of school time if they are also utilizing the stock market game while in school? And the answer is yes. If you have someone who is participating in a particular school or in any other capacity, and they also want to participate outside of school time, and they're going to be technically registered across 2 different sessions, that's completely fine. Can a financial professional volunteer come to my house? As much as we want to encourage financial professional volunteers to connect with you, in terms of going directly to your home, there are some stipulations around that. So if you're utilizing the stock market game with your child or your children, if there's something a bit more personal, then no. However, you're not limited in terms of your use of a financial professional. It just may have to happen virtually. But there are options for like homeschool co-ops that meet in different locations. If you're a nonprofit that meets on location, that's totally fine. You're also not limited again by the day of the week or the time. Are there webinars for students? So we host a number of webinars, often weekly, not just about the stock market game and its implementation, but also just to advance your own understanding of financial instruments. This is offered weekly. They're usually for our teachers and advisors. we started softly launching live webinars for students to see the participation, but we are mindful of the time frame that we're able to do that. So as of right now, most of our topics and webinars that are directly for students, we typically make during school time where they also are with their teachers or they're with another adult. Because also in order to interact with our students, there needs to be an adult present and we need to be able to confirm that. But there are a suite of recorded webinars and recorded informational videos that will likely answer the questions that students may have. So I'll open it up for some additional questions. Feel free to direct them in the chat. And as I mentioned before, feel free to ask questions. If you have questions about registration, if you have questions about the portfolio, or just how to get started, happy to answer those as well. So if anything comes up, feel free to direct this to the chat. Let's see. Can a 10-year-old kid allowed to use it without a teacher? Yes, so students of any age, essentially, can utilize the stock market game. Minor students must have an adult, however, register for them. Minor students cannot register for the stock market game. So totally fine if they want to use it independently, and that's the intention, to use it independently, but a parent or other adult designee has to register for them first. That's who we'll communicate with. That's who we'll be sending the username and passwords to. And should any questions arise, that should also come directly from the parent or other adult, but completely fine if someone of that age is using it. For the spring session, what is the first eligible day for trading? So the days for your game session dates vary based on location. So in order to find the specific game session start or end dates for your specific location, you can find that on the Stock Market Games site. That's stockmarketgames.org. If you click on the register button, right at the top, there'll be a button to find programs in my area. You simply put in the zip code and scroll down and you'll see all the information you need. There are multiple sessions, typically each semester, usually at minimum 2, a competitive session and a non-competitive, so you can choose the one that best works for you. If there are a group of parents that are in a team, can I share the advisor ID and passcode with them? If there are a group of parents that are in a team, yes. So I'm assuming that you're saying that if there are students who also have a group of parents, but it's their students that are participating, yes. If there's one person that registers for everyone and you want to make sure that all of the parents can access and track those individual portfolios, that's totally fine if you want to share the teacher resources. However, if they're not working necessarily together, it might be easier for parents to register themselves individually, but it doesn't have to be that way. The only thing to keep in mind if you're going to share your advisor username and password with additional people is not to change any information. Or so don't change the password if multiple folks are going to be using it, just to keep it easy. And also remind everyone that you can access the portfolios within the Teacher Support Center. So if it's going to be multiple people that are participating and accessing, you want to make sure that they're not actively making any changes to any portfolios. For an after-school program, will 2 hours per week be sufficient for the student's time commitment? Absolutely. So 2 hours per week, that's our average. And I think that'll go really, really well, more or less. I find that it depends more on how often they're meeting. So 20 minutes every day versus an hour twice a week, right? But 2 hours tops, more than enough to get up and running and get started. The additional thing that I will say honestly is if there's opportunity, there's a lot of things that are happening virtually. We're happening virtually. If there's any opportunity to get students together, whether in person or virtual, to have direct discussion time, that's what matters the most in ensuring its success. more so than how much time they're spending. If you signed up this week for the stock market game, our usernames and when our usernames and passwords sent. So usernames and passwords for students are typically generated and distributed 3 weeks before the start of the game session. So if you have a game session that begins, let's say February 20th, you'll receive them via email January 30th. You'll also be able to access them via the Teacher Support Center's View Team portfolio section. You'll get them automatically. There's nothing you'll have to do. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Recordings for all of the webinars, both from Monday, Tuesday, and today's, will all be sent together. Yes, there are demo sessions available about registration. Is that what you're speaking to? If you're talking about demos for registration, we do have that. We have demos for how to access the portfolio as well in terms of how to walk through it. The option to create teams and add students is available during the registration process. So when you are going through registration, you will reach a point where you have to add a class. Add a class simply means adding your particular group or cohort of students. When you are adding your group, whatever you request, that number that you request, it asks you to add teams. It will populate for you. So each team loosely means each portfolio. A team corresponds to an individual stock market game portfolio. So students can work individually, each having their own team, or in groups of about 2 to 5, each managing each group sharing a portfolio. So for example, if I'm starting a stock market game club with 10 kids, I would like them to all work individually. I'd request 10 teams during that add a class portion. But if I have 10 kids and I want them to work in pairs of 2, where each pair is going to share a portfolio, I'd only request 5. Oh, I see. For those of you, Sandra, I see your question. Can you reach out to me via email and let me know, and I'll look into your specific info. No worries there. We'll get you all set up. Oh, are there demo sessions? Yes, sorry. Thank you for clarifying. So there are demo or sometimes what we call teacher prep sessions available across locations, which last typically about 3 weeks. This is the opportunity to get in and test out the stock market game. It's only a 3-week hard stop window. So if you register for one of those sessions, you get a Teacher Support Center ID, so you'll still get a username and password, and you're also limited to how many portfolios you can have, because it's meant to just simply have an adult have the opportunity to test out the platform and see how it works and functions. So you get access to the Teacher Support Center, and you get one username and password to access the portfolio. It's not best suited to utilize en masse with a particular group. If you're ready to just get started, register for a typical session. Thank you so much for that suggestion. Someone mentioned that their students downloaded the stock market game app and they had some really great success there. So students can log in and access their portfolio both via the app or directly through the browser. Same experience, but it really just comes down to a matter of preference. Apps are preferred for a lot of kids because it's on the go, it's on their various devices, and it's just how they interact with the world now. It's how all of us really interact with the world now, but you can get the same and sometimes even a broader experience through the browser, but either one works. Is it necessary to have students lined up to participate before you register? Not necessarily. It's ideal. If you have an estimate of how many students may participate, you can go ahead and register. And rest assured, you can always make adjustments at any point throughout the game session by just reaching out to your local stock market game coordinator with the update. Great questions. So everyone who is registered, so that means if you are attending here, you were indeed registered. That's how you receive the link. You're also going to receive the follow-up recordings from every single session. We're going to do some clipping to reduce interruptions and to make it look all seamless. But we'll send that automatically at the end of the week. If by Monday you still have not received it, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. Great. If there are no other questions, feel free to add them to the chat. I'll still be here for a couple of extra minutes, or you can feel free to reach out to me directly should anything come up at sbryant@sifma.org, or feel free to call. Also, SMG teacher mentor office hours begin as of next week. These are drop-in sessions available via Zoom where you can connect directly with a stock market game teacher of a specific grade level, elementary, middle, or high school. They are teachers who have utilized the game for several years, found great success, and also across different ways. So they've utilized it outside of class time, they've utilized it in class time. They are well versed not only on the program, but kids. So that begins next week, and it's available weekly throughout the semester. SMG office hours are in the afternoon, or rather evening, typically 5 or 6 p.m. We are adding additional times for those that are in various other time zones and might still be teaching during that time to add some flexibility, but there are additional options as well that will be circulating. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. This is the last session of the week. So SMG Prep Week was a shortened week this semester. So today is the last session. Should you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. Should anything come up afterward, or you always have access to your local stock market game coordinator.